The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple.
Between 2019 and 2023, 5,700 minors in this country have had some sort of gender-affirming surgery.
This means they either got mastectomy surgeries or genital reassignment surgery.
And 8,579 minors in this country have been put on either puberty blockers or hormones,
Totaling more than 60,000 prescriptions written. The FDA warns that puberty blockers may cause brain swelling and vision loss in children, and the British NHS ended the gender affirmative care model for youth in England. The American College of Pediatrics specifically warns that these interventions harm children.
What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, I wanted to make this video because I saw everybody was talking about this statement that Donald Trump had actually put out quite a while ago, but the media got a hold of it, and of course they're trying to villainize and make it seem like it's homophobic or transphobic or anti-LGBTQ. And by the end of this video, I'm gonna tell you why so many so-called normal gays are against gender-affirming care for minors. And I wanted to make it clear, it's not only gays and lesbians that are against this, it's also actual trans people. It's just that the trans activists have been so good at lying to the American public about what's going on and what's not going on that a lot of people think they really know the facts on this. And I will drop a couple clips in here and there, but we will definitely be covering the entire statement made by Donald Trump when it comes to gender affirming care, and kind of encompasses the LGBT in general, or at least the trans. And if anybody would do the research like everybody's claiming to do online, because like always, I'm seeing that everywhere. People are like, if you would do the research, you would see that there's no minors getting gender affirming surgeries. And it's like, why don't you do the research? Let me read to you a couple of the comments that I saw regarding this. One person put, it's illegal for individuals under 18 to get surgery to change their sex. It's simply untrue. So what surgeries is he speaking of? But y'all believe anything. Okay, well, I just told you 5,700. And if you ask me, that's 5,700 too many. The other one that I saw, it's clear nobody researches to know this is a fake narrative. No child is getting surgeries or even allowed on hormones. Taxpayers don't pay for surgery or hormones because most insurance does not cover it. And if yours does help a small amount, you're still paying the bulk out of pocket. Another comment, it will go very quickly because it has not been happening. Sex assignment surgeries on minors has not been legal. He gassed y'all. This one, no child is getting gender affirming care without a parent knowing about it. If their parents decide that's the best decision for their child, that is their choice. You decide for your children. Children will lose their lives if they are not able to become who they're meant to be. This truly is sad for all trans folks. Okay, that kind of comment I really take issue with, because no parent should be making these decisions for their child. And I don't care if it's a parent that's like, oh, I know my child. It's impossible for you to truly know somebody that doesn't know themselves. And that's what a lot of people really aren't getting, is that when you're a kid, you don't know what you want to do with yourself for the rest of your life. And anybody who's been through childhood should already know that. But apparently, some of these parents are in such a hurry to do whatever the internet tells them, or whatever they think is going to make them the most popular with their circle of liberal friends, that they will risk their child's health and in some cases life to just do what's popular right now. And I encourage anybody watching this video, do your own research outside of just what I'm saying. If you want to jot a couple things down that I say, feel free to jot it down and Google it. I'm not making this video to spread any kind of misinformation, and this doesn't come at all from any kind of transphobia. I'm very honest about the fact that I've had trans friends my entire adult life. For over 30 years now, I've had friends that are trans, but when it comes to minors, we need to leave them alone and let them grow the way that they grow. So this is the one that really got me. Gender affirming care don't just affect trans people, y'all, because I know some of y'all finna be happy in the comments. You need to Google what falls under gender affirming care before commenting. This will affect people's mothers, sisters, grandparents too. The most ridiculous one, because all you have to do is literally Google, like the person said, this is what gender affirming care is according to the WHO. We all remember the WHO, the World Health Organization. Gender affirming care as defined by the World Health Health Organization encompasses a range of social, psychological, behavioral, and medical interventions designed to support and affirm an individual's gender identity when it conflicts with the gender they were assigned at birth. This is from the Office of Population Affairs. Gender affirming care is a supportive form of health care. It consists of an array of services that may include medical, surgical, mental health, and non-medical services for transgender and non-binary people. So unless your grandma or grandpa or your mother or your father are transgender or non-binary, this really does not affect them. And I know that trans activists have put it out there that if a man gets to a certain age and he needs to get put on testosterone, that is gender affirming care. If a woman needs to take estrogen for any particular health concern, that is considered gender affirming care. That does not fall under gender affirming care. The only reason they tell you this is to scare you into believing that you won't be able to get treatments that you do need, so that you'll fight for minors to get treatments that they don't need. And I will repeat, do not need. No minor needs to be put on hormones. No minor needs gender affirming surgery. And if they tell you that they're worried about deleting themselves, or they're going to delete themselves if they don't have this kind of care, what they really need is to talk to a licensed professional, either a psychiatrist or a counselor, somebody that can help them work through that mentally, because this is not a valid reason to put anybody on any kind of gender affirming care. And while if you look at me, I would never consider myself to be normal, apparently this puts me in the normal gay range.
I wouldn't be surprised if me and Trump won just the normal gay guy vote.
If you guys haven't seen the rest of that clip, JD Vance goes on to say that normal gay people just wanted to be left alone. And that's exactly what we wanted, which is exactly what normal trans people also want.
I'm curious to know what the different, where the line is between a normal gay person and a not normal gay person.
I mean, the question is...
I'm assuming, wearing as much makeup as Donald Trump wears, that would be considered not normal. It's fine for Donald Trump, but on a gay guy, that wouldn't be considered normal.
Okay, I know Anderson Cooper isn't talking about anybody's makeup looking like he dove headfirst into mom's Maybelline. Well, I can admit myself, even though I am a Trump supporter, that he goes a little too heavy on the bronzer. If he were to just tap a little off his brush... Sorry, but if he were to just tap a little off his brush and let Anderson have a couple swipes, he may not look like he's doing whiteface right now on TV. Because believe me, Miss Anderson Cooper has gone a little heavy on the makeup herself. So maybe slow down a little bit, Anderson. And if you guys want to know what I mean when I say an actual trans person, I mean an actual transsexual, a person that's dealing with gender dysphoria, a person that is a full adult and has been taking hormones, has gone to see medical professionals and been actually diagnosed. This is what they're dealing with. I personally, as a gay man, can tell you, seeing the way that my adult friends have been able to manage their conditions and live happy and healthy lives, being able to present to the world the way that they want to, I can't deny from what I've observed that this is very helpful to a very small part of the population. It's not nearly what we're being told it is.
And this is from this really noted study of over 2,700 kids out of the Netherlands that were followed from ages 11 to 26. No study like this has ever been done, either in the size of this or the number of years. And what they found was the following. They asked a lot of questions of these kids, and one statement, do you agree with this or do you not agree with this? I wish to be a member of the opposite sex. Well, these 11-year-olds, 11% of them said, yes, I want to be a member of the opposite sex. I was absolutely blown away by that number. But by age 26, that number had dropped to 4%.
And a lot of people are being led down the wrong road. And that's one of the main reasons I wanted to talk about this. So now let's get into the rest of the video from Donald Trump. Before we go any further, don't let me forget, like, comment, and subscribe. We're on our way to 100,000 subscribers. Do your part.
Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care rare, ridiculous, a process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Can you believe this?
Okay, I already told you guys, 5,700 is the number when it comes to surgeries, 8,579 when it comes to being put on puberty blockers or hormones. But outside of that, what you need to know is that not too long ago, it was uncovered, and again, this is something you can easily Google. Rachel Levine, who is the Assistant Secretary for Health from the Biden administration, came down on the WPATH, which if you don't know what WPATH is literally a trans advocacy group. That's what WPATH is. The trans advocacy group wanted to put minimum age limits on gender affirming procedures for minors, and Rachel Levine, who's from the Biden administration, came down on them. And if you ask me, the age limits that they wanted to put on them were still too loose. And I'll tell you exactly what those were so that you know. The age limits they wanted to put on was 14 for hormone treatments, 15 for mastectomies, and 17 for genital surgeries. Now, there is no reason a kid at 14 should be even thinking about taking puberty blockers. Excuse me. That's incorrect. There is a good reason for somebody to be put on puberty blockers at a young age, and that's what's called precocious puberty, which is what they were initially used for. If you don't know what precocious puberty is, that's when a minor's body is progressing faster than it actually should, and they start going into puberty at a younger age than is going to be not only ideal, but can also affect a lot of things. There are genuine reasons that a person should not start puberty when they're 9 years old. So for that reason, yeah, I get it. But outside of that, in order to change somebody's gender, or so that somebody can have the option of changing their gender and being more passable in adult life, that is not an acceptable reason to put a minor on puberty blockers, in my opinion. Let me know down in the comments if you disagree, but 14, that should not be happening. 15 for mastectomies. You're talking about a mastectomy at 15 years old on an otherwise healthy body? But like I said, Rachel Levine, who is the Assistant Secretary for Health from the Biden administration, came down on WPATH, not publicly. She took back channels, is the way it's stated in the article. But that's what Rachel Levine says. And it's kind of hard for me to refer to Rachel Levine in she and her pronouns and really respect anything that looks like this as being a woman, because in no world that I have ever lived in would that qualify as a woman, trans or otherwise. Again, feel free to make your own judgments. We all have our own picture of what a woman could look like, and I guess that could possibly be one.
I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age.
Okay, the reason I'm stopping right here is because I saw a bunch of numbskulls on social media being like, notice he said at any age. I'm gonna need you to focus, Paula. He was very clear in his statement that we are talking about youth. We are talking about minors. We are talking about children. We are not talking about adults. And if you pay attention to the context, even of that little bit, who is promoting the concepts of sex and gender to adults? You know, and to me, it really sucks that I have to make this video because it just speaks to the level of stupid that's on social media right now. And the amount that people will not just do research, which I'm not holding it against anybody. If you choose to completely stay out of this because it just doesn't affect your life or it's not the kind of thing you ever pay attention to, I don't judge you at all. But when I see a bunch of comments with people talking like they're experts and they're really paying attention to this, and then I'll read the things they're saying and I'm like, that's not true. Nothing you're saying right now is correct information. And I do feel a little bit like, can we please use our brains if we're going to act like experts? Or is it just because Donald Trump is saying it and you want to find a way to villainize him? Which that's not going to work this time around. I'll be honest when I say I saw a fair amount of comments also saying, tell me what's bad about this. Tell me that he's wrong. So continue to share these kinds of things because it creates these conversations and it also lets people know that he really does have the best intentions, especially when it comes to stuff like this.
I will then ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures and pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. It'll go very quickly.
I saw some people saying that the government isn't paying for this in any way. CMS is the federal agency that provides health coverage to more than 160 million through Medicare, Medicaid, the Children's Health Insurance Program, and the Health Insurance Marketplace. So if any of this has to be covered through any of those insurers, then obviously that's the government footing part of the bill for that.
I will declare that any hospital or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare and will be terminated from the program immediately.
Good. If they behave in an unethical manner, they shouldn't be eligible to get money from government insurance. Also, what you have to know is under the Biden administration, in certain cases, it would be considered a disability, so it was also covered as a disability.
Furthermore, I will support the creation of a private right of action for victims to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minor children.
This is probably the most important part of the plan when it comes to offering an actual deterrent, because as it stands, the minors nor their parents have any legal recourse if gender affirming care doesn't turn out to be the best course of action, and doctors take the Hippocratic Oath. That's an oath to do no harm. So if you're saying that this is the best course of action and it turns out not to be the best course of action, then there should be some sort of recourse for the minor and their parents. I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize the way that this kind of stuff can actually ruin a life if it's not the right course of action. There are now adults that had gone through it as minors that are suffering a lot of consequences, not only physical, but also mental. So in a lot of cases, they're in a worse situation than they were before. So if these doctors are going to say that this is the best course of action, then stand behind it. Be willing to take the consequences if it doesn't turn out to be the best course of action. And when it comes to the parents, like I said earlier, I don't think that they should ever even consider this, but then I can be a little sympathetic to the fact that some parents do count on doctors to have already done the research and be giving them the best options for their child. A parent truly could be like, I'm just completely relying on the doctor for this because this is so foreign to me and not something I've ever had to deal with or ever thought I would be dealing with. And so I'm just going to completely put this in the hands of a medical professional and trust that they're doing what's best for my child as well as my family. And then it turns out to be a mistake. The doctor just goes on about his merry way and suffers no consequences at all. And when I mention research, they don't even want to tell you what the results of certain research was. Like not too long ago, there was this doctor named Dr. Olson Kennedy.
She may be the biggest proponent and voice for using puberty blockers in kids in America. She's been giving them to patients for 17 years. And a few years ago, she started a really big study with the premise that if you gave these kids puberty blockers, it would improve their mental health. And the mental health being the amount of depression and anxiety they had, the amount of suicide ideation or attempts, and whether it would improve their body self-image. So the premise was, we're going to give puberty blockers to kids that self-identify as the opposite sex, and it'll improve their mental health. She's been studying 95 kids. The NIH has put almost $10 million into this. And the big news last week was she's decided to not publish the results. And the reason she's not publishing the results was they weren't what she wanted. And in fact, it found that there was no improvement in the mental health of these kids. Now, she says, I'm not going to publish it because it'll become politicized. Well, I mean, facts are facts. And she also says that these kids really had good mental health to begin with, and that's why they really weren't improved. But when you looked at a preliminary analysis of the kids, fully a fourth of them were having mental health problems. So whatever the facts of how many were having it, how many weren't, and so forth, the real damning thing to me is you do a study, you don't like the results, you don't publish it. The whole premise of science and scientific analysis and scientific inquiry is you make a premise and you see whether it is confirmed or refuted. And whatever the results, you publish them. So this has muddied the water even more in terms of what to do with these kids. Personally, as an anesthesiologist who has anesthetized people for sex change operations, man, they were all adults. I would never do that with a child. And, there's more and more evidence against using puberty blockers. That's why the NIH in England, the National Health Service, has stopped any new prescriptions for puberty blockers in kids other than a clinical trial they're doing. And that mirrors what's being done in a lot of other European countries. They analyzed it and they said there's just not enough evidence that this is beneficial.
So she ended up getting $10 million in taxpayer money. At the end of her study, she decided that she didn't want to give the results because she didn't want them to be politicized. So if she didn't want it to be politicized, do you think that the research went the way that she thought it was going to go? And if the research had gone the way that she wanted it to go, do you think that then she wouldn't have allowed it to be politicized either? Or do you think she would have been all right with it being politicized because it would have been politically beneficial to the party that she's in support of? She should have to give that money back if you ask me.
The Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients, in this case, very vulnerable.
And that's what it's about. It really is about Big Pharma trying to create lifelong customers, because once you start on hormones, you don't come off them. Sometimes people choose to go off them for a short while, but then you start losing the effects and you have to go back on them. And that's how they create these lifelong patients. So they're not being completely honest when they tell you puberty blockers are just like hitting a pause button or that they're reversible.
Dr. Christie, I just want to give a brief public service announcement. I feel a responsibility as a physician to be honest about puberty blockers and hormonal therapy in teenagers. This can lead to infertility, and I don't know if that's really well known. That means that you would never be able to have your own children. It really is important to go through puberty as your normal sex and at your normal rate and not arrest that process. Give your body time to complete the process before you start changing things that could have long-term implications. So I want you to be smart about it. That's what I'm here for. Help you out.
I don't think a lot of these young people are understanding that they are risking infertility. And while that may not matter to you when you're young, once you start getting a little bit older, you could be stuck with that as a consequence.
We will also investigate whether Big Pharma or others have illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers, which are in no way licensed or approved for this use.
See, and like I was saying, no way approved or licensed for this use, because precocious puberty was the reason that these were originally being used. A lot of people don't understand the effects. I'll play you a quick clip from somebody that actually ended up finding out after having been on them for a while. Now keep in mind, these are completely safe. All they do is just put a pause and then you just go back to normal.
I'm an almost 30-year-old man. This is what I look like. This is what I sound like as an almost 30-year-old man. This is what happens when you let people transition in adolescence before they've had a chance to grow up. They had a chance to even learn who they were. Not just let, but pressure people to transition at these ages. Young, vulnerable people who are already so suggestible. And I feel like everyone is ignoring the pain because they are afraid that it threatens their choices and their narrative. If you want to transition in your 20s, you've had a chance to be a man or a woman, and this is what you want to do, okay, that's one thing. But the active pressuring of people to transition so they can preserve their femininity, which is what happened with me. I was told that it's that if I allowed myself to age, that I would become masculine and that it would never be possible and that I would do it anyway, and that I would be a more masculine transgender person like them. And so I made the choices that I thought were right for me at the time. I do take accountability. I did it in secret from my parents. I take accountability for all my choices. But when is the trans community going to take accountability for theirs, for leading me down this path? This is the face of an almost 30-year-old man. This is the voice of an almost 30-year-old man.
And it's sad, but like I said, people are being told that it's just a pause button. So you think it's just going to be a pause button and then you'll go back to just progressing like regular, like this person did, and then you're stuck with those consequences. And they said that they did it in secret, so I don't know if they did it through a doctor or if they ended up, sometimes when I was younger, a lot of the trans people would end up getting hormones from Mexico. So I don't know if this person had somebody that brought them puberty blockers from Mexico or if they went to a doctor behind their parents' back. Either way, this person is dealing with the consequences, and however you end up there, that's where you're going to be. So just like this person, a lot of young people don't understand what it is they're getting themselves into or what they're signing up for.
My Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences.
And this is something a lot of parents have been asking for. A lot of parents do not want teachers talking to their kids about any of this stuff. The only people that should be teaching kids about this stuff are parents. When parents are ready to, or if they decide to, that is a parent's choice, and the way that they want to talk to them about it is their choice as well. If I ever have children, I would like to be able to talk to them myself about this kind of stuff. Obviously, having had trans friends my entire adult life, obviously at some point that's something I'm going to talk to my kids about. That doesn't mean I want anybody else getting in there and giving their opinions, good or bad. I just don't think that that's anything that a teacher should be talking to kids about. And especially if it's something like telling a kid they might be born in the wrong body, they might be dealing with gender dysphoria. You do not put that in a kid's head. And you want to say that this isn't true, but then you do see there are people on different social media networks talking about the fact that they do talk about this with the kids at their school, or that they should be able to talk to the kids at schools about this. That shouldn't even be on the table.
Including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination and the elimination of federal funding. As part of our new credentialing body for teachers, we will promote positive education about the nuclear family, the roles of mothers and fathers, and celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique.
There's nothing wrong with that. There are things that make men and women unique, and there's also nothing wrong with talking about the nuclear family. Even when it comes to people talking about same-sex parents, I don't even think that's something that teachers need to talk to the kids about. Kids can find that out from their own parents. If they notice that one of the kids has two moms or two dads, or if they're talking to one of the other kids and the other kid is like, you know, I have two moms or I have two dads, then the kid can take that home to their parents and their parents can explain it to them and tell them not to hang out with that kid anymore. Which I'm only half joking, but you know, a parent can handle that however they want to handle it. I don't know where everybody got the idea that this was a teacher's place. When I was growing up, that wasn't what we went to teachers about. And with teachers, I just think that when parents want to put their foot down and just be like, yeah, I don't want my kid being taught about any of this stuff in school. I get that. And I know some people would say, well, they shouldn't even talk about the nuclear family. It's like, you don't want them to talk about what's normal, because that's been normal forever. So all I know is I don't see anything wrong with what he's saying. So let me know in the comments if you feel differently.
I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth.
And this is the unfortunate part for my trans friends, but I guess they're kind of grandmothered and grandfathered in, you know, because most of them already had their markers changed and their names changed. But if moving forward, that's not going to be an option, it's too bad that the trans activists have done this, because it's gotten so ridiculous. In certain states, you can actually get an X put as your gender marker, which there are reasons that it would be necessary for somebody to know what your sex is, even for medical reasons if you're in an accident. So when we're talking about this and you think about how many steps back that it's actually going to take real trans people, because some people decided that this was just something fun to mess around about and to claim to be. So when people want to blame the right and they want to blame Trump, understand, trans activists, you made this happen. You made this happen by saying that there is no difference between a real woman and a trans woman. There was such a thing as non-binary, and we were all supposed to accept it. And you can be whatever you want in your head. As an adult, you are allowed that freedom. It doesn't mean that it has to be on your ID. And who would have thought that we ever in our life would have come to a point where we had to remind people sex is an actual thing, and you can say all the things you want about sex and gender are different, but you don't seem to understand that we have forever used sex and gender as synonyms. And so now where you're trying to make this complete distinction, it's kind of like, if you want to put it your way, I'll put it your way. You can do whatever you want with your gender. Identify however you want to identify. Stop expecting the government to recognize it. Stop expecting society in general to not only respect it, but bow down to it. Because in a lot of cases, that's what you're asking the rest of us to do. And that's why this has to be the way it is, and you're just going to have to deal with it. And unfortunately, actual trans people are just going to have to deal with the consequences that the activist and the crazy leftist have created for them.
The bill will also make clear that Title IX prohibits men from participating in women's sports.
And again, I personally, and I am a gay man who has plenty of friends still in the community, but I don't know a single person in any circle I run in that would debate this. I don't know a single person personally that thinks that biological males should be competing against biological females, also known as women. Yeah, I've had people argue that with me on the internet, but I have yet to meet a single person in real life that thinks that trans women should be competing with biological women. So when you try to tell me that trans women are the same as women and they should be able to compete together, nobody agrees with you. You are a very small minority that only exist on the internet. And it's really telling that I know zero, even on the internet, that believe that trans men, otherwise biological women, should be competing with biological men. So that there should also tell you something.
And we will protect the rights of parents from being forced to allow their minor child to assume a gender which is new and an identity without the parent's consent. The identity will not be new, and it will not be without parental consent.
There is no reason that a child should change the way that they identify and change, in some cases, what they want to be called, and that be just between them and the school. If a child is going through something like that, it could actually be a sign of something bigger. It also could be something that the family is working on as far as a mental health situation that may be going on. So that shouldn't be a secret between a teacher and a minor. And also, I don't believe that teachers should have secrets with their students. I think that sets up a bad dynamic when you have students and teachers having secrets. Secrets aren't supposed to happen between students and teachers in my world.
No serious country should be telling its children that they were born with the wrong gender, a concept that was never heard of in all of human history. Nobody's ever heard of this, what's happening today. It was all when the radical left invented it just a few years ago. Under my leadership, this madness will end. Thank you very much.
And I know some people out there will try to say that Donald Trump just said that the radical left invented transsexualism, which that's not what he said at all. But this really is a new thing that we are suggesting to people, that this could be a normal state of being or just an option. No, being transsexual is considered a mental health condition, and you did used to have to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria in order to be trans, which used to stand for transsexual. Transsexuals, when I was coming up, really did just want to live a life like everybody else and be able to present to the world the way that they wanted to present and fly under the radar. And they didn't used to wish it on anybody. They didn't want company as far as having young people think that they were transsexual. It really was a thing where they felt like they were afflicted with this thing, and why would you wish that on other people or want other people to join you in that? It's enough for you to have have to deal with and know what it is you're having to go through. And a lot of them carried a lot of shame about it, which I'm not saying that people should be ashamed of themselves now. And I'm a huge proponent of mental health and people taking care of their mental health. But I do think that trans people wanting to be discreet about it before made a lot more sense than what it is now. And so it is the first time in the history of the world that this kind of thing is not only being pushed and promoted, but also pushed and promoted to minors who are not formed enough to make these decisions. And like I said earlier, don't even know themselves. So what are we doing as a society, and how far has this gone that this is something that we actually have to now have laws enacted about? And I told you guys that I would share with you why so many of us lesbians and gays are against this. The reason that so many of us lesbians and gays are against this is because so many of us actually went through this when we were kids. I've talked about this on my channel before. From an early age, and I do mean an early age, I really thought that I was meant to be a girl. And back when I was younger, we didn't have TikTok. We had the Enquirer and Star magazine. And my mom was one that used to get all the tabloids. And I would read her tabloids, so I knew that a sex change was possible. And I also knew gay was a thing, but it seemed like gay was this terrible thing that you didn't want to be. And also my sister had told me when I was super young that if you didn't like girls and you were a boy, then you were meant to be a girl. And if you didn't like boys and you were a girl, then you were meant to be a boy. And so I really thought that I was meant to be a girl. And it was like, yeah, I knew that physically I was a boy, and I knew that I was supposed to put on like I was a boy. But internally, I really felt like I was meant to be a girl. And when I would picture myself and I would think of myself, I would picture myself and I would think of myself as a girl. And now when I look back on it, because once I realized that being a gay man was just an option, and I actually got to see that that was an actual thing when I first found out about gay bars and checked one out, even though I knew I didn't want to be gay, because I just thought gay was this bad thing. And I think that's what they're talking about when they say the internalized homophobia. I definitely did deal with that when I was younger. But once I realized that being gay was a full option and I started to really see what gay life was, I was 100% happy with who I was as far as just being a gay man, and didn't feel like I at all needed to be a woman anymore or was meant to be a woman. Because I started going to gay bars when I was about 16 because I had a fake ID and I went to the after hours that you only had to be 18 for, and I thought I was sneaking in. We'll talk about that story another day. And so then I was like, yeah, then I'm just gonna do that. And it's funny because that was when I was 16. If you had asked me just at 13, I would have fully told you that I was meant to be a girl. Like if I really felt like I could be honest with my inner thoughts, which I knew I couldn't tell anybody. And I'm thankful that I couldn't tell anybody. And I'm thankful that doing anything about it wouldn't be an option, because I definitely would have taken that option had it been available. And I sometimes kind of feel weird about it, just in the way that I remember that it was such a strong thought in my head that I really, really did believe it. And I sometimes feel a little silly about just how much my mind had convinced me that that was what I was supposed to be, or that was the way that my life was going to play out. And I posted about it on X, and then I've just seen other gays posting about it on X. And when I say gays, I mean gays and lesbians. But so many of us actually felt this way, that we're not at all hating on the younger generation, and we're definitely not transphobic. We're just saying to the younger generation, we have been in a lot of cases where you are, and we have felt that same confusion that you're feeling now. And we can tell you from actual life experience that this may not be the right course for you. And when they don't want to talk to you about studies, and they don't want to tell you that between 70 and 90% of kids that think that they're dealing with dysphoria or that are dealing with dysphoria do end up growing out of it. Some studies show as high as 94% end up growing out of it. So why are we asking these young people to make decisions that could affect them for the rest of their lives? Why are we putting it in their heads that these are actual viable options to them? Why shouldn't we just let them grow into whatever they grow into, and then let them decide whatever they decide once they're adults? And the other thing a lot of people don't want to tell the kids is that even if they do decide to, as adults, transition, they're going to need their body to be fully formed in order order to transition anyway. There are a lot of complications that come from stunting your own growth, and a lot of people don't want to talk about that either. And like I said, there is no world in which I think an adult outside of anybody's parent should be talking to them about these things, unless of course it's a counselor or a psychiatrist. But even when it comes to that, rather than affirming what it is they're feeling right now, why wouldn't a counselor or a therapist just talk to them and kind of see where they're coming from and let them know the benefits to waiting, even if that does turn out to be the way that they're feeling? I'm sure a therapist that really had the kid's best interest would know how to handle that. I think that there is a way to do it where you can be like, yeah, just hold off on that. Hold off on making any changes to yourself. Yeah, I can hear you out and affirm that the feelings you're having or the way that you're seeing things is genuinely the way that you're seeing them, but I could also remind you that these things change sometimes, and even use stories like mine or some of the other gays, you know, in a second and third hand way to let them know that a lot of us have been through this and a lot of us grew out of it. And when I think of that now, like I said, I feel a little silly about it, but the reason that I feel silly about it, because I'm not at all ashamed of it, but the reason I feel silly about it is because I was so convinced that that was the only way to move forward in my life at a point. And I can't believe that now it's just so not a thought for me. It's not like in my head I ever regret that I didn't actually start to transition, or that I'm not living my life as a woman, or I think my life would have been better if I had gone down that road instead of being the person that I am today. And like I said earlier in the video, not even actual transsexuals are wishing this on kids or want this to be the way that we proceed with minors. And so it's like really just a small group that's deciding all of this for all of us and making all of us look bad over it when there are biological realities. And I never signed off on not living in reality, even when I would respect my friends by using the pronouns they wanted. And in my head, my friends are so much what they are that I do see them as men and women, you know, whatever it is they now present as and identify as. It's easy for me to see them that way, but I just never signed off on completely losing touch with reality and pretending that biology wasn't an actual thing, and that I really had bought into this idea that nobody is really anything and you can be whatever you want. Biologically, we are what we are, and as much as some people would like to change that, it just is what it is. So I would never decide to completely disassociate from reality in order to live in a world that makes it so we can't speak truth, or we can't steer our youth in a way that would be most beneficial to them. Because whether they turn out to be gay or trans or bi or whatever they turn out, that does nothing for my life. It doesn't change my reality in any way. But if I can help a young person by even sharing my story like this, and say somebody decides to cut off this last part of it and show it to younger people just so they understand that some of us have been exactly where you've been. Some of us really do know what it is you're saying. And if that's what you grow into, then be that. But right now, while you're growing and you're forming, let yourself grow and form and just don't commit to anything. Anyway, that's the way I feel. You guys can let me know what you think down below in the comments. But if you want to see a video about a trans model that decided to out an NFL Trump supporter, check out the video on your screen now. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
They bought into his bullshit.